At long last, the day has come when I no longer have to see your face. Freeloaders who only eat and don't lift a finger should leave. You should be grateful you were allowed to freeload for as long as you did. Got that? I won't be back. Thanks for everything so far." With those bitter words still hanging in the air, I hurriedly packed my essentials and walked out of my in-laws' home, where I had lived for years. My mother-in-law stood there, smiling with satisfaction as I left. But what she doesn't know is a truth I've kept to myself, a sad one, at that. I know what's going to happen to this house. My name is Sarah, 32 years old, and I work from home. For 5 years, I've been married to Alan. We had a quiet, peaceful life together at first, but everything changed in our 4th year of marriage. Alan's father, usually in great health, suddenly fell ill and needed constant care. That's when we moved in with my in-laws. I didn't want to, not so soon, but Alan is an only child, and his parents had no one else. We had no choice. I even considered quitting my job to help care for his father, but fortunately, my employer let me work remotely because of my strong track record, and that's when the problems started. I got the classic mother-in-law versus daughter-in-law treatment. "Sarah, hurry up and cook and clean. How long are you going to avoid doing your duties?" "Mother, I'm working right now. You're just sitting there clicking away on that computer." To her, sitting at a computer meant I wasn't really working. She couldn't see that I had permission to work from home and was earning a living while juggling household chores and caregiving. After 3 months of relentless effort, I finally earned enough to match my previous salary, and I felt a sense of accomplishment. But I wasn't just working hard for the satisfaction. The reality was that Alan's salary couldn't cover all our expenses. I had thought that maybe, with my income restored, life would get a little easier, but it didn't. It felt like no matter how much I earned, the money just disappeared. When I looked into it, I found out why. Alan was spending recklessly. Worse, my mother-in-law had no sense of financial restraint either. Alan, always eager to please, had taken to treating his co-workers to lunches and rounds of drinks. Not just occasionally, he was using our credit cards for all of it. And as for my mother-in-law, she was indulging in her hobbies, paying for classes and outings with friends without a care in the world. Meanwhile, I was left footing the bill for everything, including the care for my father-in-law and all household expenses. Saving money became impossible. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to speak up. "Alan, Mother, we've been spending too much lately. If this keeps up, we're going to run out of money. Can you both cut back a bit?" Their response was immediate and defensive. "I don't want to look stingy in front of my co-workers," Alan protested. "You get that, don't you? They won't think you're stingy just because you don't always pay for everything. You don't need to treat them every single time," I said, trying to be reasonable. "You just don't understand. It's part of maintaining relationships at work. Besides, I'm not the one wasting money. What about Mom's classes and all her social outings? That's not work-related." My mother-in-law jumped in to defend herself. "I'm doing this while I can still enjoy life. You'll understand one day." It didn't matter how hard I tried to explain. To them, my income didn't count. My mother-in-law even made Alan believe that she was the one taking care of his father. While I supposedly did nothing, I was invisible. I had thought about leaving that house many times, but there was one thing that kept me there: my father-in-law. From the moment I married Alan, his father had always treated me with kindness. "Sarah, I'm grateful for a daughter-in-law like you. I'm sorry for everything." "Father, you don't have to apologize," I'd tell him, but he always seemed to understand the burden I carried. He knew that I was the one holding the household together financially, and he was the only one who appreciated the care I gave him. His gratitude kept me going. I couldn't leave him, so I stayed and cared for him until the very end. A year later, my father-in-law passed away. Now that he's gone, there's nothing holding me to this place anymore. I couldn't hold back my tears. "Sarah, why are you crying so much? What do you mean? Father-in-law has passed away. Isn't it natural to mourn?" My mother-in-law's voice sharpened. "I've been his caregiver all this time." Her words made my chest tighten. "Are you saying I didn't take care of him at all?" The truth was, my mother-in-law barely lifted a finger for her husband. She was always out with friends, indulging in her hobbies. Since I worked from home, I handled most of the caregiving and housework. But now, here she was, putting on a show for the relatives, playing the role of the devoted wife. To everyone else, I probably seemed like the heartless daughter-in-law. They comforted her and chided me, saying, Don't be so hard on your mother-in-law. It stung. They didn't understand. Their judgment infuriated me, and I resolved to keep my distance from the relatives. That's when Alan stepped in, his expression annoyed. You embarrassed Mom in front of everyone. What? How? I was only crying for father-in-law. Mom said you acted like she did nothing for Dad. I never said anything like that. I was mourning him, the man I cared for day in and day out. Well, it sure came across like you were criticizing her, Alan snapped. His words cut deep, but I fought to stay calm. Maybe it feels like criticism because, in reality, your mom hardly did anything. Are you insulting my mother? I'm not insulting anyone, I'm just stating the truth, and let's be clear, Alan, if you were so concerned, you could have helped care for your father yourself, but you didn't. Alan's face flushed with anger. Why are you blaming me? I work hard for this family. And what do you think I do? I've been balancing work, caregiving, and running this household. Our argument spiraled out of control, drawing attention from the relatives. They quickly stepped in to break it up, but after that, I stopped talking to Alan altogether. I was done trying to explain myself. Once the funeral was over, a lawyer gathered us to discuss the will. We'll now go over the distribution of the late Mr. Thompson's estate, he began. Half of his cash will go to his wife and the other half to his daughter-in-law. Sarah, his son, Alan, will inherit the family home and land. My mother-in-law's face contorted with disbelief. Why is Sarah getting anything? I'm his wife. The lawyer remained calm. Mr. Thompson was deeply grateful to Sarah for her dedicated care. This was his way of showing his appreciation. The will is final. Her fury flared again. You only cared for him to get the inheritance, didn't you? How could you even think that? I shot back, shocked by her accusation. I cared for him out of love and gratitude, not for money. She scoffed. There's no way you'd have been so devoted to him otherwise. Our argument continued, but the lawyer remained firm, explaining that the decision was based on my father-in-law's clear wishes. Reluctantly, my mother-in-law dropped the subject, though her displeasure was obvious. Fine, if this is Dad's gratitude for Sarah, then we'll follow the will, she muttered. Then, her tone shifted suddenly, and her eyes lit up. But now that Dad's care is no longer needed, we don't need Sarah in this house anymore. Her misunderstanding was exactly what my father-in-law had predicted. He had once confided in me about his plan. He wanted to free me from the suffocating life in this house after his passing, and he had worded his will cleverly to make it seem like my departure was a natural conclusion. My mother-in-law, thinking she had the upper hand, was playing right into his plan. Feigning surprise, I replied, why would father-in-law want to get rid of me like this? See, my mother-in-law sneered, even Dad saw you as nothing more than the caregiver. You should just leave. Alan, who had been silent for a while, suddenly spoke up. Mom's right, maybe it's time for us to part ways. Sarah, I've inherited the family home and land, and with Dad gone, we don't need to worry about caregiving anymore. My heart pounded, but I kept my voice steady. Are you asking me to leave and get a divorce? Alan hesitated, but then said, yes, I think it's for the best. I nodded slowly. Understood. I guess there's no place for me here anymore. With a quiet resolve, I pulled out a document from the drawer, a divorce filing I had prepared after our last argument. Alan signed it without a second thought. As I packed my things, my mother-in-law couldn't hide her glee. Finally, no more freeloading. You should be thankful we put up with you for so long. I smiled to myself, knowing they had no idea what was coming. Thank you for everything, I said softly as I walked out the door. My mother-in-law watched me go, her face full of satisfaction. But they were completely oblivious to what lay ahead for that house. After leaving, I went straight to City Hall to submit the divorce papers. When I arrived at the apartment I had rented in advance, I stood in the middle of the empty room and shouted, finally, I'm free. I felt overwhelming relief and joy, thankful for my father-in-law's clever plan that had allowed me to escape. Now, my life was my own again. I had settled into a comfortable routine living alone. Working remotely had allowed me to manage my time better, leading to a smoother workflow and an increase in my income. I was enjoying my independence, free from the chaos of my in-laws' home. Then, one day, my ex-husband Alan called. It's been a while, why are you reaching out? We're in a pinch. Sarah, please help us. What a joke, weren't you the ones who told me to disappear? My salary hasn't changed, but for some reason, we're running out of money. We can't keep living like this. Oh dear, that sounds like quite the predicament. I decided it was time to deliver the final blow. That's because you no longer have my income to support you. Huh, what do you mean? You still don't understand? Did you really think your salary alone was enough to maintain your lifestyle? I thought we could manage on my salary. Of course not. You spent your entire paycheck on yourself. We survived because I covered our living expenses. It's high time you and your mother learned some financial responsibility. How much were you making, then? Let's see, at that time, I was making about $4,800 a month. Maybe that's more than I earn. That's right, you had no idea, did you? By the way, I'm earning even more now, without anyone holding me back. Laughs. I could sense Alan's frustration boiling through the phone. Hey, Sarah, can't we start over? It was a mistake to let you go. I want to make things right. Huh, it's obvious you're after my income again. Are you really that foolish? That's not true. I still love you. Don't be ridiculous. I never want to see your face again. What happened to the inheritance your mother received? With that amount, she should be living comfortably, right? That's the problem, it's about to run out. That's impossible. It was nearly $100,000. Right? But Mom and I spent it all on shopping sprees, trips abroad, and half of it vanished at the casino. A foolish mother raises a foolish son. I have nothing more to say to you. I'm a stranger now, and I can't do anything for you, nor do I want to. Don't be so heartless. Please help us. This has nothing to do with me. There's nothing more to discuss, so I'm hanging up. Don't call me again. With that, I ended the call and promptly cancelled my mobile phone contract. What became of Alan and my mother-in-law was no longer my concern. About a year later, as I passed by my former in-law's house, I saw it had become an empty lot. They likely lost the house due to financial issues, but that was their problem, not mine. With my newfound free time, I decided to pursue a long-held interest in wine. I enrolled in a wine class, where I met a man 2 years older than me who took me seriously. After dating for a year and a half, we got married. He was the ace of a well-known company, and despite his impressive salary, he was humble and had a warm, wonderful character. He respected my career, and we enjoyed a fulfilling married life built on mutual respect and love. These days, I can't help but feel that this new happiness is a form of retribution for all I endured. Perhaps it was my father-in-law's way of looking out for me, even from beyond.